Good morning, my Teaserking family. How's everybody today? I am fine, hoping you're well. So we got a lot to talk about today. We'll start with the NFL, and then we'll get into some coaches, some eBay gold, Trump economics, inflation, a wide variety. All right, so let's look at football first. Let's see what the line is. I was interested. I was watching myself on YouTube. When I'm searching, I actually saw one of my videos, which is unusual. I usually got to go to my channel. So I started watching it. I'm like critiquing myself. It's probably a good thing to do. So let's go to the line. Let's see if there's any movement. Philadelphia 6.5, 47.5. No, not really. 6.5, 47 is what it's been. KC is going up to 2 and 48.5 from 1.5. So that's going up from 47.5. So people are listening when I give the score. All right, so let's check some weather. And then we'll check the injuries if there's anything new. Still 39 and partly cloudy, 10-mile-an-hour winds in Philly. It shows sunny with a little bit of clouds. Let's get into the detail. Partly cloudy with a low around 22. West wind around 5. See, it's funny. It says 39 and 10, and then it says in here, well, it's going to be 22 and 5. So I don't know how it goes from 39 to 22. But let's just say it'll be about 30 degrees with some wind, but not really important. Here in Kansas City, 32, partly cloudy, no wind. Partly cloudy with a low around 22. Again, 32 to 22, west wind around 6 miles an hour. So again, we'll assume 30. We'll assume partly cloudy, no rain, no wind. All right, so we see the line. It's funny how people bet against what people have done with the thought process, well, they don't know what they're doing. So if you bet on Kansas City, I'm going to take Buffalo because you're going to be wrong. What an idiot way to pick. You've got to make your picks because of what you're doing. Who do I like? And you come up and you analyze the games like I do, and then I go and I make my decision based on what I like, not what anybody else is doing. I remember I was at Venetian, and Michigan was playing Kansas State in a bowl game, and Michigan's quarterback was injured and out. Now, I know Michigan because I live here, and the backup was terrible. So Michigan was Kansas State, I think, was 7-point favorites in the game, and I made a lock on Kansas State. They had Tyler Lockett at the time. And I'm at the poker table, and some people, who do you like? And I'd say I'd take Kansas State. And a couple of guys were betting on Michigan because the line moved from 5 to 7. And I said to them, but the quarterback's out and the backup's terrible. And of course, they didn't believe me. They bet because the line went up, they were betting against it. And Kansas State won by 20 points. And you just look at these guys, and there's nothing you can do. Like, this is why people are stupid. This is why people lose. You have to make your own analogy, but you're betting players, and if they're not good, you don't bet against them because somebody else did. That's insanity. Anyway, we got Washington and Philly, so we are betting based on what we like. It's 6.5. In this case, Washington, a B team, 23 defense. Daniels, 17-2 this year in a teaser. 13-2 as a road dog the last 2 years. Yes, Daniels wasn't there last year, but still, I think they're 7-1 this year. We're 6-1. Philadelphia, an A team, 18 defense. Hurts, 14-3 against the number this year. I view it that Washington matches up very well with Philly. Yet when I listen to the radio, all these guys are on Philly. And I don't know why. Daniels was the best player on the field, better than Barkley. He proved that against Detroit, and he proved that in the earlier game against Philadelphia when they scored 36. So they beat them 36-33. They've seen the defense twice. They know how to attack it. They've seen Barkley. Okay, been there, done that. So they, as you see it, you now know how to defend it. I like their offensive coordinator, although I can't remember his name, from Texas Tech and Arizona. Not a very good head coach, but a good offensive mind, which is, see, these teams are getting confused. They're taking good offensive coordinators and trying to make them head coaches, and they're not head coaches. They're offensive coordinators. That's what they are. They're good at Jim Schwartz. He was a good defensive coordinator. Or look at Spagnuolo. Great defensive coordinator, but he's not a good head coach. So I don't know why they try to be head coaches. This guy, Ben Johnson on the Lions, good offensive coordinator, not a great one. He's got the weapons, so it's easy. Like I said, it's like having Michael Jordan. It's not that hard to be a good head coach. And now he's going to try to be the head coach at Chicago. They made a big mistake. I was listening to his press conference, and this guy, not a leader, not a winner. They asked him questions, couldn't answer it. Then they asked him, well, how did you learn how to be an offensive coordinator? He goes, well, Mike Sherman and somebody else, Pat Shermer. And I'm like, these guys stink. These guys are not good offensive coordinators. You're expecting Lincoln Riley or the guy at Texas Tech or somebody at TCU who's a really good offensive coordinator. So it's like, this is your background. How is he ever the offensive coordinator of the Lions? I think was a mistake. I think he fell into it because they fired the other guy, Derek Bevel, who was, again, another guy he learned from. And you're like, this guy's an idiot. So I think because the Lions were so stacked offensively, he looks better than he is. When he gets to Chicago, I doubt they'll win 5 games next year. He didn't sound like a leader because he couldn't answer questions directly. If you ask me, well, what's your background in economics? Well, I got a master's in it. Here's my diploma. I can show you. I got a master's with distinction, Austrian economics and corporate finance. And it's a direct answer to a direct question. When they asked him a question, he just said, well, I like Chicago. And you got Caleb. You got big problems. All right. Anyway, we'll get back to that in a minute. So I just think Washington with the offensive coordinator, I think they know how to, look at Minnesota. They couldn't move on the Lions. Buffalo could with Josh Allen. So all of a sudden, Daniels does, and well, it's because everybody was injured, but they weren't injured for Minnesota. So I thought that was they were able to blitz Darnold, and he couldn't move. Josh Allen could move and was a good quarterback, which is their weakness. And then the same thing here with Daniels, who can move, and he's a good quarterback. So now we got Detroit's what you call it, the weak point, right? There's another word, but I can't think of it. Their weakness, I guess. And so we have that, and then so this week. So how does Philadelphia play? Well, or Washington, they put up 36 on Philly. They put up 40 on Detroit. They put up 23 and beat Tampa and beat Atlanta. Now, Atlanta doesn't have a great defense. Tampa's okay. Tampa's defense is a 23. Philly's is an 18, and Detroit's was a 21, maybe a 23 with the injuries, although they were giving up 30 a game, except for the Minnesota. So I'm looking at it as 34-30 Washington. I think Daniels can move the ball. He's already played them twice, so it's not a big thing. And then the first time was early in the season, and he's trying to figure it out. But when he gets in the second time, even with the turnovers, they put up 36 and win the game, a game they had to win. So in the clutch, in the pressure, they're not choking. They're actually succeeding. Joe Burrow and Mahomes do that. Lamar, Josh Allen don't. Goff obviously doesn't. One of the better quarterbacks that could do it was Ken Stabler. And he showed it against Miami in the 74 championship, or 74 playoffs. Unitas was good at it. Joe Namath beat Baltimore, beat Oakland, beat Baltimore in 68 to win. He just got hurt, so he couldn't do it. But when he got the opportunity, he won. He didn't lose to Baltimore. Earl Morrall choked. Unitas was hurt, but Unitas was a winner. Bart Starr was a winner. I mean, when he got there. So there's certain players that when they get the challenge, they win. And certain players, when they get the challenge, they lose. And Fran Tarkenton was one of those that choked, right? Roger Staubach didn't. Bradshaw choked at first, and then he was okay, but more or less he was just one of Franco and Lynn Swan and Stallworth and the great defense. So did he really, so he didn't choke. He won the 4 Super Bowls, but it wasn't because of him. So that's what you have is I think Daniels, he's had the chance to choke and he hasn't. He's come through. Philly game, the Atlanta game, and then in the playoffs on the road at Tampa, he could have easily lost. And then at Detroit, he should have lost. And yet he's still, they punted once. They just killed Detroit. Now, some people say, well, their defense isn't that good. It isn't. And we're not saying that. But it was good enough to hold Detroit to 31 and get 5 turnovers. And this is what people don't understand. Well, it's a bad defense. Yeah, but they got 5 turnovers against Detroit. They turned over Baker. They turned over Philadelphia, and they turned over Michael Penix. So they might not be great, but they got very good secondary. Okay, and I hate when people look at statistics and they go, well, Barkley should have a good day because statistically, again, their running defense isn't that strong. You don't even look at that. It's a bullshit stat to look at because you don't know the situation in the game. It's like time of possession. It's totally a waste of time to look at because you don't know what's going on in the game. You could have had a kickoff return, a strip sack, a pick six. So you're going to have no time of possession, but you scored 21 points. That's why time of possession is meaningless. Turnovers are meaningless because you don't know if you're going to get them. You can't assume it. But what you can know is the quarterback, what kind of game is he going to have? The defense, they've been playing well. I mean, they kept Baker to 20 points, and then they kept the Lions to 31. Granted, they had the turnovers. Now, one of the turnovers was a pick six. Another one was they got down to the 10-yard line, I believe. The Lions lost the game, but they could not stop Daniels. So why is all of a sudden Philadelphia going to stop Daniels? Yes, I know. I love all my Georgia players in Philadelphia, but they gave up 36 to him last time. And the way they're rolling, I don't know that Jalen Hurts can win the game. And now I'm hearing Jalen Hurts is fine and he practiced. Bullshit. You saw the injury. They bent his knee back, and he's in a brace. So don't tell me all of a sudden, miraculously, he's fine. Unless he's putting castor oil on the knee, which I doubt. He's going to be maybe 50%. All right. Now, 100%, he's not good anyway. You can't read defenses, and he makes terrible passes, a lot of turnovers. So I'm not seeing that. He might be good at play action. When they fake it to Barkley, they might bite on it because they've got to take Barkley. So that's made Hurts look a little better this year. But we know in a big game, he chokes. He got pulled from the Alabama game with, I think, Clemson for Tagliavoa. So he got pulled there. He goes to Oklahoma. Doesn't do anything at Oklahoma except he runs a lot because that's really Lincoln Riley's offense. Sends the receivers deep so the quarterback can run. Great offense. Jesus. Caleb's not a good runner. That's why it didn't work with Kaler. Miller Moss doesn't run. That's why it didn't work with him. It's really a shit offense. And you saw him the last few years. I mean, they didn't even go to a bowl game because they sucked this year. And then last year, they did go to a bowl game, but Caleb was terrible against the good defensive teams. They did shit. So keep that in mind. So Daniels played Alabama and their defense 2 years ago and lit them up till he got knocked out by a cheap shot. And he does well against Georgia. So it's not like he can't play against a good defense where Caleb can't. So I don't know where, the way their offense runs, I don't think they're going to have much problem against Philly. Like I said, I got 34-30 Washington. You get 12.5 in a teaser with it. I mean, that's unbelievable. My spread on it was 3. And I almost think Washington should have been favored, but I understand it's at Philly. Yes, I get Barkley, right? Barkley, very good running back. However, if you're down 21-0, you don't have Barkley anymore. You can't run the ball. You have to pass it. If that's the case, Hurts, big trouble because you can't play action. He's like Goff. He's good on the play action, but otherwise he sucks. Devontae Smith's no good. A.J. Brown's very good. Goddard, tight end's okay. It's mostly Barkley running. So Washington puts 9 on the box and says, Hurts, you beat us throwing, which you can't. There's no way they'll blow them out. If anybody gets blown out, Philadelphia gets blown out. So Philadelphia beat Green Bay 22-10 and the Rams 28-22. They should have scored more on Green Bay, and they didn't score on the Rams. So you're getting 12.5. Daniels will get you at least 28. That's 40. Philadelphia's not scoring 40. Washington's defense is not that bad. They force a lot of turnovers. And Philly's got an excellent defense, but it doesn't matter because Daniels will eat it up. So first game, I think, will be competitive. I think goes down to the wire. I think Washington wins it. There's Washington winning. There's Philly winning a close one or a blowout. I'd say you have 0% chance of Philly blowing out Washington. You have a better chance of Washington blowing out Philly. I think it'll be a close game, and I think you take the 12.5 with Daniels because he's showing you they've won, 7 in a row, and the big games in the playoffs, they've at Tampa and at Detroit, and winning at Detroit is far more difficult than winning at Philadelphia. I know they got all my Georgia guys on their defense, and I don't question it, but their defense is kind of like a cover 2 zone, so you got plenty of room to pick it apart. So I got Washington 34-30. All right. KC, Buffalo. Well, I think we were going to check the injuries, right? So in the injuries in that game, I got Cosme the guard out. We saw him hurt his knee, and I questioned the rolling where they hurt the knee. They have a lot of guys that are injured. What is this injured rest? Crowder, injured rest. Zach Ertz has a rib. Luvu, injured shoulder. They're all minor injuries, football injuries. They'll all be playing, just the guards out. Philadelphia. Oh, now Hurts is listed, injured knee. Covey, a wide receiver I never heard of, out with the neck. Goddard, the tight end, injured ankle. Sweat, the linebacker, injured ankle. A.J. Brown, injured knee. Some guy named Young, defensive tackle, out with the hamstring. So they got 2 outs. 2 outs. And that. But don't, believe me, Hurts is not 100%. If I'm Washington, I'm not letting this is our war. I don't let their strength beat me, which is Barkley. I don't let Barkley beat me. I key on him. I take him away and say Hurts, because I can't stop them both. But of the two, I got to stop Barkley, then Hurts. Hurts doesn't show me anything. So that's game plan. And then on Philly's side is, well, I can't let Daniels beat me, but you can't stop him. If you blitz him, he goes around you. If you play a cover 2, he hits guys in the middle. So it's a very difficult thing to stop Daniels. It's like stopping Mahomes. You got to, but you can't. All right, Kansas City, 248.5. My score, Kansas City 27, Buffalo 24. Maybe a little higher than that. Maybe we get into the 30s. KC, great defense. Spagnuolo, been there, done that, knows how to shut down, knows how to blitz. Allen's hard to really capture because he can run so well. As I said, Buffalo is 16-3 in a teaser, 6-1 as a road dog. KC 15-3 in a teaser, 7-1 as a home favorite, and bet against as a home favorite this year. So they win games close at home. So I think Buffalo is a live dog, but I think Kansas City is a live favorite. And then the total 48, I think you could probably go over there because Allen plays a higher scoring game. They seem to be able to score. They usually get in the 30s. KC will be right with them. So you're probably looking at least a 50-something point game. Teaser Lamb 48 goes down to 42. Probably good. I'd be more scared to go under 54.5 Buffalo. Although normally Philly and KC, I like playing under because of their defenses, but not against these offenses. I learned that with Ohio State and Oregon the first game. I was debating who to take, and the game was in Oregon, and they both have really good defenses. but they both have really good offenses, and I ended up going over in the game and winning it easily versus taking the dog. So tendency is when you have really good offenses, they will figure out how to score on the defenses. The defenses are good against the weaker teams or against choke quarterbacks. All right, let's go for injuries. Buffalo, we've got Hamlin, the safety, injured rib. Out. Rapp, a safety, is out. Everybody else is injured. Kincaid, my guy from Utah, the tight end, injured knee. Milano, injured biceps. He's always injured, that guy, always with a different injury. He must have went to Alabama. Kansas City, Mahomes, injured ankle. We know that's bullshit. And that's it. They got 4 guys injured, but they don't have Neil Smith, the defensive tackle, is not listed, although he's had cap problems. So, again, my score here is 27-24 KC. I think at the end of the day, KC wins the game. Now, does KC blow out Buffalo? And I don't see that. Excuse me. I don't see anybody blowing out Buffalo. They're too good. Josh Allen is getting better. Defense is okay. But KC's not a blowout team. Mahomes gets the lead. He kind of sits on it and runs the clock. He controls the game. They're not looking to score and score and score. They're looking to control the game. Allen can score. Good receivers, good offense. Then he runs when he needs to. 4th and 1 or 2, they'll run him. So they will score on you. KC's defense, and really no defense is that good to just shut them down. So I don't see a shutout or a 30-point win for either of these teams. So that leaves you with if the game's close, KC wins it. Well, I mean, the game will be KC will win the game. Buffalo, can they win it? I don't think so. I don't think Allen has the balls to win it. I think he's a little bit too much of a choke when the game's on the line. However, he's been playing better. Look at their defense against Baltimore, right? They had Baltimore 21-10, and then what happened in the second half? Allen doesn't show up. They start running the ball for some reason, 3 and out, punt, punt, punt. And then they let Lamar get a long touchdown at the end of the game, which could have tied the game. Where was their defense? Where was the pass rush on Lamar? I mean, it's just ridiculous. You can't just let Lamar sit there. Pressure him. So that's where you see the underlying how weak Buffalo is. If they're down, if KC's down a little at the end of the game, Mahomes is going to pick them apart because they don't know how to blitz, and they just play a weak zone, keep everything in front of them, and then Lamar picked them apart. So I don't see any way Buffalo can win this game. At home, KC, Mahomes, he's going to win the game, but it'll be close. So again, 27-24, maybe 31-28, 33-30, somewhere in that neighborhood, I think is what you'll get in the score with KC coming out on top. Because no matter what scenario you use, if KC's way ahead, Buffalo will score late to make it a close game. If Buffalo's ahead, they can't stop KC from scoring, and KC wins. KC will probably get the lead. Buffalo makes it close, and KC runs the clock out because that's what Mahomes does. And that's what I see happening here. So I do think it's a close game. I think it's a live dog in Buffalo. I think it's with such a low point spread, it's a live Kansas City bet. And I think it'll be definitely high scoring because you really can't stop either one. You can't stop Allen. and you really can't stop Mahomes. Buffalo doesn't have the defense to stop it. Maybe Philadelphia could stop Mahomes. Maybe they did stop Baltimore, and there was a few good teams Philly was playing, and they just shut them down. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But there's no way Buffalo has the defense to stop Mahomes. That's clear. So, teaser is posted, and I might add another teaser. There's several ways to go on this. The only bet I wouldn't make is Philly even. I could take Washington in the points. I could take the over in the game. I can't take Philly even. I can take Buffalo and the 8, and I can take Kansas City plus 4.5. And I could go over in the game. The only game I probably can't do is under in that game. That'd probably be the only bet I couldn't make there. But I think people have a hard time seeing what's happening. You've got Daniels beating all these teams, and you're ignoring him. That's all I hear on Bet MGM or whatever. They're all on Philadelphia, and you're like, did you not watch Daniels against Detroit? Did you not watch him against Philly? Did you not watch him at Tampa? And at what point do you not respect or think Daniels is any good? We understand Barkley's good. We're not saying he's not. We understand the Philly's got all the Georgia guys on their defense. And we get how good they are. But that's not the point. I mean, it's Daniels is the best player on the field there, as is Mahomes in their game. That's what you have to understand. You're betting on the best player on the field. That's how you bet. That's why he's the best player, because he went into Detroit and scored 45, and Darnold, who goes into Detroit, who's playing very good, gets nothing, gets 9 points. Detroit had the ball, or Minnesota had the ball inside Detroit's 10 4 times and couldn't score a touchdown. That's Darnold. Daniels puts up 40 points on the same defense in the red zone and all over the field. Why? What was the difference? Daniels knows how to, he's a winner. That's the difference. That's why Darnold's a choke, and that's why Golf's a choke. Golf can't quarterback. So next year, how bad is Detroit going to be without their coordinators? Well, it depends who they get. If they get an existing quarterback, like Mark Brunell was a quarterback coach. If he's now the OC, it'll be similar. It'll drop a little bit, but it'll be similar because he knows he's a quarterback, so he knows what to do. Defensively, they'll suck because not that this guy was any good, but who you going to get? And then he'll be good. But the Lions' defense isn't any good. Now, keep in mind, with Hutchinson against San Francisco, they gave up 34 points. So you can cry about the injuries, but you had pros playing in that position. Now, there's certain levels of pros, but you didn't have, you can't say, well, it was injuries, and that's why Detroit was able to beat Minnesota, but not able to beat Washington, who wasn't, they're a good team with Daniels. They're an explosive team. They're young, but a good team that doesn't choke. So if you had a better quarterback than Golf, and I still think Hooker should have been the quarterback. I love how these radio guys just poo-poo Hooker like he sucks, and I'm like, all right, he beat Alabama 50-49, and I'll keep going back to that game because that was a Nick Saban defense. That was a very strong defense, and he lit it apart. And he made some great plays, great throws under pressure. Please explain why you don't think he's a good quarterback, and tell me why he's not better than Goff when we know he's better than Goff, because we know Goff chokes. Hooker wouldn't have thrown the ball, turned it over 5 times. He didn't turn it over 5 times against Alabama. So I don't know what you're looking at. Apparently, with this balanced offense, and anybody could be the offensive coordinator, I have a feeling Hooker would be a much better quarterback because he wouldn't turn the ball over. And Detroit has a problem with Goff because any big game, he turns it over. Right? The Baltimore game a few years ago, the Carolina game that they needed to make the playoffs a couple of years ago, last year against the Niners, threw the interception, fumbled the ball with the running back. And this year, 3 interceptions and a fumble. He was so bad that they actually had the receiver throw the ball in the fourth quarter because they couldn't trust Goff. All I know is Detroit's got big problems when their coordinators run out. They couldn't leave fast enough, right? I don't get it that you really go and you're an offensive coordinator and then you go to head coach. I don't get that because most of them fail. Very few of these coordinators move up to head coaches and do anything. Maybe Sean McVay. That's it. We see whatchamacallit, what's his name? The Niner coach, Shanahan. He's terrible as a head coach. We see the Miami guy from San Francisco. He's terrible as a coach. A lot of these guys move into – that's why all these guys, Jacksonville, they fired their coach, the Bears, because they're all offensive coordinators. They're not head coaches. If you want a guy for Caleb, then make Ben Johnson your offensive coordinator. Then he can sit there, but he's still not going to do anything with Caleb. He didn't do anything with Goff. He just had a very balanced offense, so it was very simple. Then we have, there's a problem in Detroit because these guys are running away, right? And then the assistants will run with them. I don't think Dan Campbell is a very good coach. I think he's a good motivator, maybe. But look at the game plan against Washington. He had no way to stop Daniels. It was a terrible game plan. Against Buffalo, against these good quarterbacks, he has no answer. He tries to play man for man. Well, I remember a couple years ago, Michigan played man for man when they had Don Brown as the defensive coordinator. And they played man-on-man against Ohio State. And Ohio State beat them by 30 points. All they did was run crossing patterns, and they were faster receivers. And Ohio State, that was the last time Ohio State beat them. Michigan ran man-on-man and got killed. So it's not the answer. I think last year they played zone, and they couldn't cover anybody. And they kept giving up 200 yards to CeeDee Lamb and 200 yards to Jefferson, and in the playoffs, Ayuk got 200 yards, and that's the problem. He's got no secondary, and everybody loves the GM for some reason, which I can't understand. And what has he done? His defense sucks. You win with defense. You don't win with offense, right? Everybody loves Philadelphia this week. Kansas City's winning with defense. I mean, it's basically they have a great defense with Spagnuolo, and then Mahomes is just a superstar, but it's really they don't have a good offense. They got Kelsey. And then occasionally Pacheco, who's an average running back, or Hunt, Hunt didn't do anything at the other teams, right? Cleveland, he didn't do anything. So it's just balance, right? And they kind of just average offense and a great defense. That's why they win. That's why New England won with Brady, is when they had a great defense. Montana One when he had the great defenses, Ronnie Lott and Hacksaw Reynolds. But notice they won the Super Bowl in 81. They didn't win it in 82 or 83. They didn't have the defense. Then 84, they got the defense. The Bears, the 85 Bears, the Lawrence Taylors, Jimmy Johnson with the great defense. That's what wins for you. Baltimore with Ray Lewis. They shut out the Giants. That's what you win with. And yet Detroit still hasn't figured this out. Well, we're going to win with offense. No, you're not. You can't win with offense. It's never been done. Ask Dan Marino, ask Dan Fouts. You do not win with offense. You win with defense. So he hasn't figured that out. Everybody wants to call him great for drafting these guys in the first round who are average players. And, I'll take a guy from Alabama. What a great GM you are. I'm so sick of hearing it. I'm not buying any of it, right? Again, I'm an inquisitive type, and we went through my high IQ people. We always ask questions, right? And so the questions to him are, why aren't you drafting? Like this year, we'll see how good a GM he is. There's two great defensive linemen from Ole Miss and two great defensive linemen from Tennessee. We'll see what he does. If he should draft, he needs all four of them, basically. If they really want to win, they need at least two of them. But I doubt he'll get them. He'll go after an offensive lineman or somebody else from Alabama. His ability to read players is terrible. This Arnold guy, number 0, gets pass interference every time. He's terrible. And he's starting. That's Dan Campbell. So I see the coordinators run away as soon as they possibly could. They interviewed and left. I mean, one goes to the Jets and one goes to the Bears, two shit teams to get away. Not good teams. I like Coach Pete, went to Oakland. I feel very good about that. You watch. Now, Oakland will be much better with Coach Pete next year. But Chicago won't be better. The Jets will be worse. These guys, he's a bad defensive coordinator. Now he's your head coach. What made him a good head coach? Has he ever been a head coach before? No. He's not a good defensive coordinator. At what point is he better than Robert Saleh? Saleh, I saw, went back to the Niners. Look for them to be very strong next year if they get McCaffrey back. Otherwise, they got all the pieces. They just had a lot of injuries. And that's what you're looking at is the coordinators. You watch New Orleans. I mean, they get shit. Jacksonville hired the offensive coordinator from Tampa. Well, all right, they won't win 5 games next year. He'll be there 2 years and gone. The Bears 2 years and gone. Like I said, I heard the interview, and I thought he was terrible in the interview. Couldn't answer the questions directly. Kind of beat around the bush. Where have we heard that before? Oh, yeah, Joe Biden. Those people are not good leaders. Right? So if you ask me a question and I beat around the bush and don't answer it, it's because I don't know, which means I'm unprepared and I'm not I don't have the knowledge to answer the question. So when they're asking him what kind of team you want, what kind of this and that, well, we'll do this. And it was all bullshit. And he's like, well, I'm not Dan Campbell. And we know you're not Dan Campbell. However, I'm not sure how good Dan Campbell is. Yeah, they had a good team. They were they're in a very aggressive team, which works until they play a good quarterback. And Josh Allen and now Daniels. And that's how they played. Darnell we see is not very good, and Jordan Love's not very good. Josh Love's better. Caleb stinks. They played the AFC South. They don't have a good quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, Stroud. So we'll see. I find most of the coaching hires are just absolutely idiots. That whoever's making the hire has no idea what they're doing. The GMs have absolutely no idea. They don't watch college ball. I think they just look at the All-American list, and I saw that one year. Here's the All-American list, and you could just see the players being taken. But the problem is the list is skewed. Who's making the All-American list? You're just listening to somebody making a list that is absolutely meaningless. These guys aren't out. The better players, I point out the better players. They're not all Americans. So anyway, Coach Pete, I love that hire. Now they need a GM to get players for him. Maybe he'll be the GM and the coach. Lombardi was that. Lombardi would go through 50, 60 players until he finally got the right players, right? And he had an eye for talent and for guts and heart. That's what the Steelers did. That's what the Packers did in the 60s, the 70s Steelers. All those guys, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Donnie Shell, Mel Blount, Joe Greenwood, they all hated to lose. They all had very good passion for the game, and they loved the game, and they were smart about it. That's why they were so good. And you watch the Lions, and they keep getting these guys that are a bunch of idiots. And even today, golf is not a good quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. Like I say, every big game he chokes. Name one big game he's won, because you can't. And then the Rams, the one year they went to the Super Bowl, so you would say, "Oh, he won the NFC Championship." That was Todd Gurley winning the game, not Goff. And then when Gurley finally got hurt, Goff sucked, and then they finally got rid. They gave him away to the line. It wasn't even a trade. We want Stafford. What do you? Oh, we'll take Goff. Oh, you can have him. We don't want him. So again, the Lions using an inferior quarterback, and off he goes. So, yeah, he can make wide open passes with play action pass because they have the offense where it's set up, but Hooker's a much better quarterback. And, you really hope Goff gets hurt, so Hooker's forced to play, and then you'll say, and it'll be like Lou Gehrig, you'll never see Goff again because Hooker gets in. So, again, I don't know why the radio guys poo-poo Hooker. They just show how stupid they are, that they don't understand. Hooker's a better quarterback, and he's clutch, and he beat Alabama. And that's what you look at, the passion and the intelligence to beat Alabama in that 50-49 game. That's what you look at. You can't say the Georgia game because they blitzed the shit out of him. So he never had a chance because it was just blitz, blitz, blitz every play. He'd go back, and he was immediately sacked. Well, that's not Hooker's fault. But when he had time against Alabama, he lit them up. And that's what you look for. How is he under pressure? Threw a lot of touchdowns, and he won the game. Didn't lose the game, didn't choke the game, didn't turn the ball over. But the radio guys will not admit, or just don't know, or just see Goff doing with it, and they don't understand, thinking Goff's very good, and he's not. That's why the Rams got rid of him. I don't know, if he was Joe Namath, the Rams wouldn't have got rid of him. Anyway, so that's it. So it's good that Coach Pete's there. The Bears and the Jets will do nothing. They'll be lucky to win. The Jets probably won't win too many games. He's in way over his head, and he wasn't a good defensive coordinator. And then you've got the other guy, Ben Franklin or whatever his name is. He sounds like he's in over his head already. Well, we'll do this, and we all strive to win. And Chicago's a great city, and you're like, you do not sound like you do not sound like Jimmy Johnson. You do not sound like, you don't even sound like Sean Payton. So anyway, that's what you have. We'll see about the draft when it comes up. But in the meantime, we got Washington beating Philly 34-30, and we got KC beating Buffalo 27-24 or 30-27. Should be a pretty high-scoring game. And then we will see Washington, Kansas City in a very good Super Bowl. I would think we'd have KC -7, and then in that case, I would tease Washington in the over. Washington's an over team, basically. Their defense is okay. They get turnovers. With Daniels at the end of the game, they win. So he's a winner. All right. So that'll be football. We do not really care about what the radio says. Please do not listen to them. They really have no idea. You can tell us after 11 I'm eating. They really have no idea. They're just trying to make you bet. I hate these player props. I wish you wouldn't listen to them. I think they're very poisonous. This guy, Barkley, over 50 yards or 80 yards. This guy's you have no idea. The guy could get hurt during the game. If it's like Kansas City, they're going to run the ball and eat up the clock a lot on Buffalo. So Buffalo's players aren't going to get the stats you think. Washington's going to do the same thing. They're going to just eat the clock. But they will score, and Philly's going to give it to Barkley. So you're betting on A.J. Brown to score, to get a lot of yards? How's that going to happen? Because the only chance they have to win is give the ball to Barkley. Get it out of Jalen Hurts' hands. Well, since they won't be able to stop Daniels, you will see some passing. They'll have to. And Hurts will throw a few interceptions. I would bet that one. All right. Gold. We saw what it was. It ended yesterday. It'll come back tomorrow night. So it ended at 27.72. Silver 30.64. There you go. So 27.72. I told you it would be 27.50 by the end of the week. Last week, it didn't quite got to 27.20, but it broke 27, and now it's 27.72. Silver 30.64. So what you hear from these guys on eBay, on YouTube, supply is short. Look for the price to go up. These people just do not understand. It's got nothing to do with free market supply and demand. The only reason it moves is because of JP Morgan doing derivatives and the bullion banks. Between London and the US, the bullion banks are shorting and doing derivatives in a desperate attempt to keep the price down because they have all these other derivatives, because they have no idea what they're doing. The game's changed in gold, where now Basel III says you can take delivery, and China and Russia are taking delivery, which forces there's very little gold in COMEX, and they need gold to do the derivative, and it's been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And the fact that since they have to deliver, so they're trying to push it down, but there's too much demand for the gold, which keeps pushing the price up because the physical pushes the price up. So that's what you have with the price. And that's why it doesn't matter. The central bank's demand has pushed COMEX up, but that's why you only see the 27 72 instead of 27,000. If you got the gold, if you got the derivative paper Ponzi scheme, basically they're flooding the market with paper, but we don't care because we buy physical. So it's apples and oranges. You can't flood the market with physical. That's the beauty of gold. And I heard, what was it, Mark Mcgwire or Egon, one of the two yesterday actually acknowledged me by saying, I think it was Mark Mcgwire. He says, "Well, you can't print gold." And what have I been saying for the last year? That the reason gold is such a value is you can't inflate it, you can't print it. You can only print the dollar. And I never heard Egon or Mark Mcgwire talk about it. And then yesterday, Mark Mcgwire said, "Well, gold's so good you can't print it." And I said, bingo. Finally, he's listening. So that's why we want gold. It's limited and high demand. That's why all the central banks in the world are buying it, because it's limited and high demand, and it'll go way up in price. But silver, even though the demand is huge, that's not how the price moves. The price only moves by the derivatives. Only COMEX prices it, and only the derivatives are the price to it. That's it. And that's the whole point of it. It's so you can say, yeah, the demand's high, and believe me, the other demand for everything is just, doesn't matter, right? Central banks buying it or people buying it for silver, it doesn't affect the price. Nothing affects it but the derivative. That's how it's being priced. That's why when they say it's going to go up, they don't know what they're doing. It's not going to go up because that doesn't move the price. In a real free market, like we have with Rolex or Mantle cards, you see the price go up. Montana's rookies, 110,000, free market. Gold sitting at 2,700 because they won't let it go up. So that's the big difference. It's not free market, and it's price fixed by J.P. Morgan and the bullion banks, because they have all these derivatives that are shorting the price. They want the price to go down, but there's too much demand for the price, that there's too much demand for the physical that makes it go up. So they can't control the price. They're going to get fucked. They're going to lose all trillions of dollars because the derivatives will never hit. They'll never go. And therefore, you won't see the price go up until we get rid of COMEX. Excuse me. So the first thing you got to understand is COMEX is the pricing mechanism, not the free market. Excuse me. So until you understand that, why do you get frustrated the price isn't going up? And the demand's there, so the price should go up. No, it's not going to go up until J.P. Morgan starts buying gold. Maybe with Trump, they'll start doing that. With Trump, they'll go, hey, you know what? We should be buying gold. We should be buying gold because Trump's going to be pro-gold, because he knows the only way to get out of debt is not with Bitcoin, but with gold. And then maybe they start, instead of shorting it, start calling it. A put down, they want the price to go down. A call up, call, they want the price to go up. These are option terms. And that's where you're at with it. So when they start doing that, then you'll really see the price start to move once they figure it out. But they're so underwater in these derivatives that they placed earlier, like gold at 2,000 or gold at 2,200 or silver at $22. They can never get out of the position because those prices will never be seen. And that's the problem. So with that said, that's what you have going on, and why the gold price doesn't go up. But yet, all these guys on YouTube, and they don't get it. Egon kind of gets it because he says the price will go up, but I don't know when or how much. And, I can't tell you the time. Well, the time has been delayed because of JP Morgan. That's why. Mark Mcgwire kind of gets it. He knows the bullion banks, or maybe it's Egon, knows the bullion banks are going to lose their ass and are keeping it down. But that's what they're doing. They're watering down with the paper gold and the paper silver. That's why the prices aren't moving. However, we know in the real world, the physical is the only place to be. And all of a sudden, you're going to see it skyrocket. So that's why I advise you to buy as much as you can. Basically, get your paychecks if you're still working and pay your bills. And then the excess, you don't want in cash. You don't want anything in the bank. You put a little bit of money in the safe. And then you get your paycheck, and it's pay my bills, and then go buy gold and silver. If you don't have that much, you buy silver. If you have enough for a half ounce or an ounce, you buy gold. So keep that in mind. You have to play Rumpelstiltskin. You have to turn your toilet paper into gold. And most people just don't understand it. They look at it, what the price doesn't go up. Well, do you know the price is manipulated by JP Morgan? No, you don't. That's the problem. You don't understand it. So therefore, you don't know what to do. You're unqualified. Now, as I said, I'm trying to help people, but I'm getting very, very frustrated about that because people don't want to listen. And I'm getting tired of defending myself and trying to prove my point. I know my point is solid. It's not a guess. It's not an opinion. It's fact. So I know gold and silver are going to the moon. So I'm just getting to the point where if you don't like gold and silver, that's your problem. I can't help you. And occasionally I'll have people come to me and ask me about it. I've had that in the hot tub. Aren't you the guy with the gold? And explain it. Or the guy in the sauna who thinks I'm going to sell it for fiat money. And I said, don't you understand? Gold is the money. And it went way over his head. Although I think maybe he did that finally penetrated that. He's like, oh, yeah, maybe that's it. But if you keep expecting, see, you can't, it's like I keep using you eat a chocolate cake every day and you think you're not going to get sick and you're not going to gain weight. Well, that's just ridiculous. And that's what it is. I mean, these people keep printing the money and you're thinking, well, the money will never lose value, will never go out, which is just ridiculous. Of course it's going to lose money, and of course it's going to go out, because that's what it does when you print too much. And all these countries are going bankrupt. China, Japan, Germany, Italy, France, the UK, Spain, Hungary, Romania, they're all going bankrupt, mostly all of Europe. They use the euro, so they need a new dollar. They keep buying the dollar. I don't know why. I looked at Argentina with Millie and all his little changes. Then I looked at the value of his dollar, and he's fucked because it's worthless. So all these changes he's making, he's missing the one point. He's staying with the U.S. dollar instead of going to gold, which you don't understand. He calls himself a liberal libertarian, which there's no such thing. That's the point of a libertarian. It's the five things I say. It's low taxes, it's free trade, it's a gold standard. That's what a libertarian is. He's for limited government because we realize government is mostly corrupt. So you don't really want a corrupt government. So you keep it small, and they just do keep the laws safe, keep the money safe, keep us on the gold standard. And have a military. I mean, what is the purpose of government? Because it doesn't really work. It doesn't work anywhere. Putin's the closest to actually having a good government. But it's all corrupt. The lobbyists can pay you off. What kind of government's that? I'll give you $1 million to do what I say. If it was me, you know my answer. I'd tell them to fuck off. There's no way I'm going to do what you say. Because it's like, let me run a company or let me run Teaserking, right? President of Teaserking. And then somebody comes and gives me money and says, well, take this team. I'd say, fuck off. If this is who I'm betting. Take Philadelphia. No, I'm betting Washington. Well, here's some money and give your pick out as Philadelphia. And I'd say there's no chance in hell I'm doing that. I'm going to give my picks the way I see it. I'm going to run my company the way I see it. I'm not going to get bribed and take money in order to do what somebody else wants me to do. What kind of person are you? You're certainly not stoic. You're a loser. And I hate losers. So this is the problem with the government. The lobbyists, first of all, they need to get rid of lobbying. And they shouldn't even need to. It should just be don't take bribes. But everybody in government, that's why Biden, how do you think he ends up with all these $1 million houses? He didn't make $1 million a year. He's making whatever, 100,000, 50,000, 200,000. Working in as a senator or congressman, whatever the hell he did nothing. He just took bribes. That's why he pardoned his whole family, because it's all bullshit, bunch of criminals. And he gives George Soros an award. Yeah, I wonder who was in charge. Yeah, it was George Soros, which we already knew. But with Trump, it ain't George Soros, although he will try, because he did put his George Soros's finance guy as the Treasury Secretary, which worries me greatly. So now I question if Trump's bought and paid for by Soros also, because to put his guy in charge, you must. It's like putting, well, we won't put Hitler, but we'll put Heinrich Himmler in charge. We'll have Joseph Goebbels be our marketing guy. Didn't he work for Hitler? You sure you want that guy? So I'm questioning Trump because of his hires. Bitcoin will never work. This is not real. So good luck with that one. Just buy your gold and silver. Keeps you out of the digital currency. All this control crap, I don't buy any of it. Nobody's controlling me, I guarantee you. I won't allow it. I'm too smart for that. All right, so let's look at a few videos. So we'll first go with Egon.
File free in the app by 2/18. When you switch to TurboTax, do it yourself.
Stop relying on Band-Aids to your muscle tightness, stiff joints, and recurring injuries.
Gold is the only money that has survived. We're going to see.
He signed already 200 executive orders, Egon.
Executive orders.
He intended to do that. It is my impression that with Trump, we will see a lot more unpredictability, especially, as you already indicated, when the expectation bubble bursts. What do you think?
Well, I obviously wanted Trump to win. My first reason was that he was more likely to not continue wars. It won't be easy to stop, neither in Palestine or in Ukraine. Because these are conflicts that are much more complicated, especially Palestine, which is thousands of years old conflict, and the same in Ukraine. But at least, the U.S. weapon that they have is to not send any money to these countries, and to Israel and to Ukraine, and that will clearly at least limit the war. And I don't mean to stop, but that there's He's not totally unpredictable, I would say, but he knows what he wants, and then probably the only leader in the West today who knows what he wants. But we have disasters in the UK, in Germany, in France, etc. And here's someone who is determined and who will take decisions. As you said, 200 executive orders. I mean, that's remarkable. And it's a very interesting tool that the Americans have to actually take action quickly. Nevertheless, I mean, it's, many of them are good. I like the one with, he says on there, from now on, only 2 agendas in America. I must say, I like that. The many political parties around Europe have come to as far as many as 27 genders. So to have 2, I agree with 2. That's all I know also. So that makes it simple. And then the whole oil, that's fantastic, is now oil, what's this expression? Pump, baby, pump. Or is it drill, baby, drill? Maybe it is. Yeah, drill, baby, drill. We will have a need for fossil fuels for the next 50 plus years, probably longer. It's 65 or 85% now of the energy in the world. So again, he recognizes that, and this artificial move to electric cars, for example, that the world isn't ready for. Let the consumer decide. So a lot of these decisions are very good in my view, and he has a corporate America behind him and a strong team behind him. So that's positive. That's not going to help when it comes to solving the US problems, of course, which is a massive debt, massive deficits, and they're not going to go away with Trump. Probably become bigger because his spending is probably going to be bigger than the country can take. So we will have the same crisis as we would have for any president. At least there's a bit of optimism now, and therefore, a lot of us look forward to that. It won't change the view that we have on the world. And we'll discuss more of that now.
Let's have a look at the situation as we always do. And the consumer, we know, plays a very important role in the USA. I found here a good indicator for the health, and this is the car market. Let's have a look at this and some other statistics. I found it interesting, Egon. At the start of February, the total US supply of available unsold new vehicles was 2.61 million units. That's 870,000 units, or 50% above a year ago. Inventory was down from 2.66 million at the start of January. Days supply at the start of January hit 80, up 38% from the same time a year ago. So that's really looking not good. We have here statistics that's for the car brands, and you see the American brands have particular problems. And as I just read, the US consumer, of course, the same as we have it here, the prices are ridiculous. So people move to used cars. Here's the used car index, Egon. It moves sideways, so it looks still pretty good. And then we have, of course, the credit card debt continuing to mount. Here we got that. Then we see falling house prices. And this is a very dangerous fact for the US if you have borrowed against it, which nearly everybody did. And on the other hand, you have still high interest rates. Here is the 10-year bond, the yield. It will probably continue up with the flood of new papers to be issued. Trump promised a lot, MAGA, but reality sooner or later will catch him, and then he has to deal with it.
No, the average American is suffering. He has too much debt, and he will. As we've said many times, he's probably one paycheck from bankruptcy. So credit is very essential for the American consumer and individuals. And the debt keeps on growing, will grow. At the same time, the government debt grows, and of course, that with higher interest rates. So, as you know, I've always said that the long rates will pull the short rates up. The Fed will try to keep short rates down, but they don't control the long rates to the same extent, and that's why we see 4.6% 10-year bond yield. And in my view, that I've expressed that many times, the interest cycle turned in 2020, and we are now in a long-term uptrend, and I would expect US interest rates, together with much higher inflation, to go about 10% over the next few years. And that, of course, will put enormous pressure on the individuals and enormous pressure on the US government to finance the debt. And then, of course, the optimism of Trump, which I think is wonderful for the country. Everyone is so enthusiastic now. But it won't last when you come back to the reality, especially of debt. And you cannot solve the debt problem by more debt. So that's when you will run into problems that any president would have done. It'll be interesting to see how he actually can deal with that. Because as we know, over time, no leader ever in history has been able to deal with the debt escalating at this rate. So
you must use gold to do it.
But we will have the optimistic period now for a few months, I hope. It might not last that long, but it could do. And let's rejoice about that. But the reality will hit Trump, and it will hit the U.S. also, not because of Trump, but because of the over 100 trillion debt that the U.S. economy has in total.
And what a coincidence, Egon.
$100 trillion debt, not 36 trillion, $100 trillion. And then all the derivatives tied into it. All the banks will collapse. It'll be very interesting.
There's discipline that never works. It's like beating a child every day, and the child is immune to being beaten. And it's the same here. There is, the debt ceiling has increased since 1960. I think it's 68 times. 68 times in 1960. So why is it there for? The US hasn't been debt-free since 1825. And actually the US debt, federal debt, has gone up without exception almost every year since the early 1930s. So the whole thing is a farce. We know that we're coming to an end of a monetary era. We know that that will end with much, much higher debts and high inflation, possibly hyperinflation. So they're fighting against something that they can't win. But of course, they will have to pretend that they're taking this fight on. But sadly, it's going to be a losing fight.
I think that is the reason, Egon, to pretend to have it under control, which obviously they don't. But now let's come to this reverse repos. And I really need your opinion here, Egon. We see it here from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. It peaked here at over 2 trillion in January 23, and now it's close to zero. Either the banks do not need those reverse repos, or they are really drawn off liquidity. What's your interpretation?
My interpretation is that this is temporary and it won't last. I think it will reverse fairly quickly as the banks come under pressure, and pressure has to be refinanced by the Fed, nobody else. Right now, there has been some excess liquidity, and the banks have therefore coped without borrowing from the government. But the trend is clear to me. If you look at the long-term trend, we will see continued borrowing at much increasing levels by banks as they come under pressure, and the bad debt portfolio in property, set to commercial property, private property, and many other areas will necessitate much more, not just borrowing, but actually crisis solving also. As banks come under pressure, like we saw just a couple of years ago, that will happen again and lead to a massive increase in Fed financing.
that was our view or our look at the USA. Let's come to Asia. Totally overlooked from the mainstream, Egon. There is another big scandal or bankruptcy in the real estate market. China, as I frequently report on my channel, is not looking as good as they sell it to the outside. Not at all.
I'm going to reveal the only 5 to 7 stocks that I believe you should trade options on, and how I've been.
As they sell it to the outside. Not at all. China Vanke, a major property developer, finds itself in deep waters as officials wait a government takeover amid liquidity concerns and the CEO's unexplained absence, causing market jitters. And not just that, Egon, I stay in Asia. Longer dated US bonds have already touched 5%. We saw this at the beginning of our talk, with that milestone now seen by many on Wall Street as a new normal for the price of money. Similar spikes are playing out internationally, with investors increasingly wary of debt from the UK to Japan. There is a tantrum-esque type of environment here, and it's global, said Gregory Peters, who helps oversee over 800 billion as co-chief officer at PGIM Fixed Income. And look what Peter Schiff recently wrote on X. No one seems to care, but the yield on the 10-year Japanese government bond is just under 1.25%. Soon it will hit 1.5 and then 2%. Once yield moves above 2, JGBs, government bonds, could crash, sending yields soaring. That's a problem if you are totally debt loaded and then the interest coming up. Not just a problem in the USA, also in Japan, UK, and China, real estate. So we see it brewing everywhere globally. I have no doubt that we will, after this little euphoria vanish, we will hit the brick wall one way or another.
Oh, Jan, what you're describing is absolutely correct. The financial eras or cycles or monetary eras always end in first a massive increase in debt and interest rates and inflation, and then an implosion of debt. We have now still the
So all this is because of inflation. Because you printed your money to death, and money has no value. People have to go into debt because prices go up, because you need more dollars to buy the same goods. That's what inflation is, not prices going up. So people basically don't have the money. They get laid off, and the money is worthless. You're laid off of your job. You can't afford your bills. You get into debt with your credit cards. And that's why all these countries are going under. And as we know, the only answer is gold and silver because they can't print it. Why all these countries are off the gold standard after you had the greatest success with the gold standard from 1879 to 1913 is beyond me. They're all Keynesians. They're all corrupt. I think the problem with government is it's all corrupt. So all these people they're just out there to steal money. Hey, Greg and John. So that's the problem. They just go to steal money. Look at Biden. He's got all this millions of dollars. He didn't earn it. So you get into government because you take the buyout by the lobbyists and you don't really run it properly, which is what's happening. So, and of course it's going to end badly because the dollar loses all its value. So that's the trigger of the economy, is the medium of exchange, or the dollar, for all these countries. And it goes bad because you print it to death, because the people in charge don't realize if you print it to death, it'll happen. And of course, that's why the countries collapse, because they don't have money, because that's what you need to run the medium of exchange. So it's very simple. So, yeah, I already said that. Pete Carroll went to the Raiders. So that's the problem, is people, the government should not be running the money supply. It should be done by somebody like me, an economist who's Austrian, who understands gold, and it should never get off of gold, and you'd never have any of these problems. So, yeah, it's really strange.
coming to the end of an era. We're coming to problem. We are in a problem, and the final stages of a problem that can only end one way, with like all monetary systems have ended in history, and that's making the currencies totally worthless, and also the debt worthless or almost worthless. We're going to see that. I don't know how long it's going to take. It'll take longer. Normally it takes longer than you expect. I thought it would happen faster than it has. But nevertheless, we are in the now explosion phase, or the exponential phase, as I have demonstrated many times in my articles with the football stadium, how fast it actually, if you fill it with one drop of water at a time, how fast it goes at the very end. And that's the stage we are approaching now. It's inevitable. It's always happened in history without fail. Every monetary system has failed. And everyone hopes that it's not going to happen under my reign. Every prime minister, every president hopes it's not going to happen when I'm there. And they've managed so far to keep the world going with fake money. But one day the emperor will everybody will say the emperor is naked, and he really is naked. And that's not going to be a pretty sight when actually the world discovers that. And that's what we are approaching. It's only a matter of time. It's absolutely certain that's going to happen, whatever anybody says.
And gold and silver, of course, we have to talk about that also.
Of course.
More and more people seem to realize that the financial system is really in danger, and the ETF stocks, they are increasing. The monthly transparent holdings of gold that you see here now. And also, if we look at the charts, gold in many major currencies is at record high, although the retail, of course, and professional investors, we have discussed this, I think for 2 years or so, they are still sleeping and not entering the market. They will come late, as always. But before I ask you about your opinion, I'd like to show some charts of gold prices in certain currencies. Here we have, for instance, in US dollar, there it's lagging. In euro, we have a new high. Here in British pounds, the pound is weak. As you said, Britain is going down. Swiss franc, Canadian dollar, etc. So it's running up nearly in every currency. And gold and silver, they will not solve this problem we have right now. But that's the protection the people should grab and take to protect what they have now, because many will not be able to protect what they have accumulated right now.
Yeah, it's quite amazing that, for at least the last 25 years, gold has been going up with minor corrections, but the trend, as you showed, is so clear. We, for example, for ourselves and our investors, entered gold in a major way in 2002. It was to the pound, for example, £200 for 1 ounce. And now you show the graph is 2,200. So gold is up 11 times in pounds. And obviously we have been talking to investors about gold during all of that time, but still it's only 0.5% of world financial assets in gold. And that's because nobody understands gold and no government wants to talk.
What he misses is with the inflation, the portfolios go up because now everybody's a billionaire, where before they were millionaires. So the problem he has with the 0.5% is, of course, the values have gone way up. So, of course, it's only going to be 0.5% because gold hasn't moved. The fact that they miss is, yes, gold's gone up in derivatives, but still price fixed. Gold's still there. So once we get out of COMEX, then it's a whole new ball game. People are saying Pete Carroll's too old. Can he coach? Yes. So he's not too old. To give Trump, you should be in the administration. If he was lucky, I would be. Is that Cowboy? No, that's Egon. It's not Cowboy. The other guy is a host. He's not Cowboy. So again, You're still missing the point. The price is still COMEX derivative, not free market.
About gold or promote gold. No asset manager or wealth manager wants to have gold in their portfolios because they can't churn commission on it. But and therefore,
where did he get that from? He never said this before. And he's getting it from me. And I feel pretty happy because I'm actually teaching Egon and Mark Mcgwire what the hell is going on. He's never said that that's why it's not in the portfolio, because they don't get commission on it until now. You're welcome.
They stick to all the funds and investments where they can earn big fees. So it's a very sad story. This is history. As no currency has survived in history, and gold is the only money that has survived. It is, as we call it, it's nature's money. It's the only real money that actually
can't be printed
manufactured by nature in the most wonderful way, and therefore, you cannot create an artificial currency that can equal gold, and that's why gold has maintained purchasing power for hundreds of years.
And you can't print it.
So the world will discover it, both institutions and individual investors, but they always come late to the party. But the party is going to start very soon, and we are going to see acceleration in precious metal prices, both gold and silver. And as we know, when they really start moving, silver moves a lot faster than gold. Investors must know, of course, that it's not a straight line. There are corrections on the way. Especially in silver, there'll be bigger corrections because silver is more volatile. But overall,
no, it's because of the derivatives. That's why silver has more volatility. Once it's free market, you won't. The reason people don't have it is they don't know about it. If you're not taught about something, how do you know it? It's like, if you don't know I'm out there, you don't know a lot of things. And then you find my channel and then everything, all the lights turn on, you go, but you didn't know about me before. You couldn't find me or whatever. And that's really the issue. Nobody understands gold. Nobody knows about it because they've been making money in the stock market. And they've been making money on real estate or annuities. So they don't look for gold as a option because it really doesn't go up because it's being price fixed and held down. So nobody knows about it. And if they do find out, they go, well, it doesn't really move. Why should I buy it? They don't get because it can't be printed, and that the dollar gets printed, and that the dollar is worthless going out, and gold can't be because it's going up. So this is the whole big problem. People don't know about it because they're not taught about it. They don't teach you gold. I happen to get into a school where they taught it, and I was lucky, and they probably don't teach it now. So that's the thing. People just don't know. So how could they possibly be into gold? Because that's the plan, is to keep you out of gold, because that's freedom. We can't control gold, so we don't want you in it. So Alligator thinks that gold's suppressed because China wants to buy it, and I'm saying no, it's the bullion banks who are going to get fucked if it goes up. They're the ones who have all the derivatives and they're going to go broke. They're the ones keeping it down so the derivatives don't expire and they have to pay it out. That's what it's not. China and Russia aren't stupid either. They see the price like we see the price low. I run and buy gold and silver because the price I know is very low. All right.
As I said, we're coming to an end of a monetary era, and that end will mean the acceleration of the debasement of the currency.
Inflation.
Remember, that's all we're talking about. We're not really talking about gold going up. Gold isn't going up at all. Gold just reflects stable purchasing power. It's the currencies and the value of the currencies that will now descend at a much faster rate. And that will be reflected in the gold price. This is why I've been saying for certainly the last couple of years, gold will be now revalued by multiples in the coming years, because you will have also
Because it's been price fixed.
central banks going from US dollar assets, US treasuries, that they're not going to hold anymore because of the confiscation of the Russian assets.
And the fact they're worthless.
And therefore, they will switch to gold. And that will be a major shift that will take place. They're not going to do it take time. They're not going to do it overnight. But it's inevitable, and it's happening now, and it's going to continue. And the gold that we have today in the world, and is being also mined every year, which is 3,000 tons, it's not going to be sufficient at current prices. That's why this increased demand will create much higher prices. So that's the situation. It's so simple. Central banks are gold holders' best friend, because they will always destroy the economy. They will always print more money, and therefore they will always debase the currency, and gold will always reflect their actions by going up not in value. Gold maintains its value, but it's going up against fiat currencies that are collapsing. It's so simple. So people, please understand that, and please understand that we're getting into the acceleration phase. It's not going to happen overnight. A big, slow, gradual process. There will be corrections. Nevertheless, that is where you should have part of your money.
All of your
not only
money.
for appreciation of your assets, but also for protection, insurance against the banking system, which is so fragile and which is unlikely to survive. And if it survives, it's going to be with so much funny money, printed money, that is worthless, which is, again, going to put upward pressure in the gold price. It's so simple.
That's simple, Egon, and therefore we...
It is simple, Egon.
Gold could go up by multiples that we don't even understand today. If we get the hyperinflationary period, the Germans would remember Weimar Republic and with a trillion marks for an ounce of gold. So it's meaningless to measure. We know that gold will at least continue to be equal to purchasing power, and therefore maintain purchasing power, and probably also do better than purchasing power, because of all the forces that are now going into gold for protection, for investment. When you talk about mining companies, you follow these successful people, McEwen and Rob, fantastic peer behind him. I'm sure that the winners, although this industry has been difficult, good people have always built successful companies, and I'm sure McEwen will be one of them. Or is already, but even more so.
Sounds like a lot of bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
Hi, whether I'm on the road with our
This will ultimately.
All right, so Mark Mcgwire was on yesterday. Silver breaks free of COMEX. Now, he really doesn't, he kind of explains it and kind of doesn't. It's similar. He gets off on tangents of like, what the hell is he saying? But we'll hit a few brief points with Mark.
First-tier asset gold.
Now, we'll shortly circle back on how this leads into the current unprecedented breakdown in the exchange for physical spreads between, that's the EFP spreads, between the non-compliant COMEX-derived prices and the compliant foreign exchange gold market, and how attempts to close these paper-to-physical price disconnects are actually resulting in gold lease rates spiking up to 2002 levels, and the last time we saw them was when gold was trading at $300 back in 2002, and physical shortages drove a $600 rally in gold from here to here before any kind of settlement of those imbalances. And in silver, we saw...
Hold on. So if it's not gold going up, it's the price, it's the dollar going down. How did gold go down to $300 an ounce? Because the dollar's been going down since 1971. Since you took it off of the gold standard, they keep printing money. It keeps losing value. The dollar's going down, and yet gold went down from 800 to 300. Explain that one, alligator. You're full of shit. It's price fixed by J.P. Morgan. So at this point, it would be the gold price going up to get back to where it should be with all the inflation of putting the dollar to zero. Gold should have been going up, and it wasn't. So now, yes, this is the gold price going up to where it should be, which is about $20,000 or so. So I don't think he understands. I think what he's trying to say is it's an ounce of gold, still an ounce of gold. And it takes so many dollars to buy the ounce. Now it takes more dollars to buy the ounce. So the ounce really hasn't gone up, which is bullshit. Yes, the ounce has gone up. And it should go up much higher. And that's what we need to see. All right.
As similar, but in this case, it was an $18 silver rally. And again, from here to here, before these EFP imbalances were restored, i.e., they were able to be arbitraged successfully. Now, look, the point is, bullion cannot be printed. So prices had to rise to incent.
Bullion can't be printed. Where does he get that from? Because I've been saying that for years. That's why gold has a value. It's because gold can't be printed. They finally got that. So that's why it's perfect, because you can't inflate gold and you can't destroy it like you do the dollar. That's the key. So Mark Mcgwire, give him a cookie. Let's replay that.
From here to here before any kind of settlement of those imbalances. And in silver, we saw a similar, but in this case, it was an $18 silver rally. And again, from here to here, before these EFP imbalances were restored, i.e., they were able to be arbitraged successfully. Now, look, the point is, bullion cannot be printed. So price.
God, I love hearing them. That's the whole point. That's what the inflation is. You're printing the dollar, and the more you print, you kill the value. That's why gold's gold, because you can't print it. It comes out of the ground. You can't counterfeit it. You can't print it. Whatever it is. That's the beauty of gold.
Had to rise to incentivize enough bullion to come on offer to restore the balance.
Now, what's missed by mainstream media analysts is that global central banks, sovereigns, institutionals, they're moving to swap this much higher risk first-year US Treasuries for zero counterparty risk first-year Basel III compliant gold for physical delivery. And how this is exacerbating this widening paper to physical divergence. And as we've relayed in previous episodes, it's not just central banks and sovereigns hedging dollar exposure. It's pension funds, fund managers who've got trillions under management. If you remember, we drew attention to UBS, we drew attention to Swiss pension funds and others. Now, I've had so many questions, though, on this. So let's look at the effect of this through physical market lenses and step through what has led to this and why this will ultimately shake gold and silver free of COMEX-driven paper shackles. Now, what is not being factored into current gold and silver price forecasts is that physically settled global gold and silver exchanges outside of the cash-settled LBMA CME ring fence have now become, this is important, sufficiently liquid enough to break free of these historical inverse dollar and bond correlations. The lines have crossed, and there is just no going back. Rising bond yields resulting from impossible to justify rising debt levels into also a wrong-footed Fed. It's pretty obvious. And the unknown effect, obviously, of Trump's upcoming tariffs, they're accelerating these diversifications. Now, old guard, Western-facing analysts, relying on historical correlations to endure, see rising bond yields and a rising dollar as limiting gold's upside because their assessments are blinkered on how real physical prices are being discovered outside of the legacy cash-settled markets. Now, in fact, the bulk of these very large arbitrable spreads are destined actually to be cash-settled, with very limited physical gold flows from London to COMEX New York vaults. And I'm talking about gold here. Now, for example, and we touched on this in our last episode, now, while still bullish on gold at the open of January trading, at the end of the year it was, end of 22 or throughout 2024, Goldman at the open of January trading pushed out their $3,000 gold price projection all the way out to 2026. And that was based solely upon synthetic market expectations that a rising dollar and bond yields, that could be through rate cut expectations being diluted, etc. That this is going to cap gold from rising to 3,000 in the short term. That was their rationale. They openly said that. Now, truth be told, though, footprints affirm that Goldman Sachs are very long both physical gold and silver for their own books. And par for the course, clearly they don't like competition, and they're using the Trump tariff uncertainty as an excuse. And they're going to be proved to have driven the price to 3,000 by the end of the first quarter. And they'll come out and say, things changed. Now, our physical-facing first-tier liquidity providers, and yes, we talked about this last time, one of them is a market maker at Goldman Sachs. They're betting that the forced unwind of dwindling COMEX open interest flowing into the physical settled markets outside the COMEX LBMA bubble, which they do see, will continue to evidence the dumping of US Treasuries for gold alongside central banks capitalizing on swapping the strongest dollar since November 2022 into physical gold. Now, this exacerbates the break in historical inverse correlations. In fact, liquidity providers expect safe haven gold and silver will continue to be positively correlated to rising dollar bond yields, while also benefiting in de-dollarization flows into gold and silver. So it's a perfect storm. And add in the corresponding alchemizing of a November 2022 strong dollar into gold, silver, and dollar price commodities. Gold sub $3,000 is considered to be way below fair value. And hence, central banks continue to capitalize on every fix sub this assessed value, fair value level.
It's also absolutely no coincidence that November 2022 was the exact point that the Bank of International Settlements took advantage of an equally strong plus $109 index, which was the exact point that the BIS short covered the last of its over 500 tons ahead of Basel III compliance, valuing FX gold as a first-tier asset class, which was about to compete with the US Treasuries and correlated dollars. Now, illustrating a massive global move to hunt out wealth protection assets, the historic bond and dollar inverse gold and silver FX correlations are actually pivoting into a positive correlation. Now, we simply have to benchmark where gold and silver were priced in November 2022. And at spot, and this is the spot market. It's not the futures market. This is the tradable spot market. At spot 1,616 and a dollar index at just over 109, foreign exchange gold was benchmarked at well over $1,100 lower And following the same market-making LBM act as short covering silver, at exactly the same time, at $17.50 in September, just slightly.
All right, I don't like these charts.
Yielding money market funds.
Andrew, you had expressed concerns that investors would once again race into money market funds. What are the risks in doing this?
Yes, money market funds pose a very big risk. QE and or bail-ins will likely force these money market funds to also be gated. When you see bail-ins occurring elsewhere, why would they not gate money market funds? It is possible to do so. Now, the only zero counterparty risk first-year asset class left standing will be physically settled gold and silver. And given these exchanges are BRICS-centric and require fully paid up physical bullion to be lodged before it can be offered for sale, and it's anyone's guess as to how high the offer to sell will be into a bid-only market, that is. Now, the CME is going to be forced to margin call the Fed to buy back all their undeliverable, heavily leveraged shorts before the COMEX is drained of every ounce backing up synthetically priced bullion. Now, while we're seeing those EFPs stretching the other way right now, that would reverse. Now, every single market-making bullion bank is Basel III and SFR compliant in gold. And while the latest COMEX reports evidence these banks appear to be short against heavily leveraged speculators, all of these fresh COT short additions are hedged to the extent of what they can lay off against the momentums who do control 75% of the COMEX open interest. But netted out, these well-connected market-making banks are long for their own books and will also benefit from a much higher gold price. Now, as far as the naked short momentum specs are concerned, the potential reoccurrence of a potential COVID-like plus or minus $100 spreads between NSFR compliant gold, physically deliverable backed spot gold, and this 96% leveraged COMEX open interest, it's going to trigger a rash of margin calls, in turn forcing a bid-only market. Now, only this time with no one to bail out the brokers holding this debt, and there's a risk of a Bear Stearns-like default. And that is why we titled our last episode, RIP the COMEX, as this also comes actually with a warning. Now let's put Trump tariffs just aside for the moment. We are exactly 2 years into Basel III and SFR compliant, 10 times larger globally settled foreign exchange market, and it's far too late for the CME to call a gold and silver futures force majeure. Attempts to gate the COMEX back door, which is their Achilles heel, which is the ability to take a paper diluted price and put it into, and we're talking gold here, but really then to convert that into a compliant T+1 deliverable contract, is this game has historically enabled the COMEX price gold and related non-compliant silver, but not so directly, to be converted into physical at non-deliverable COMEX determined prices. Now, this would blow up this time such a discrepancy would blow up literally billions of dollars of office of the comptroller listed derivative bets, which are undoubtedly on the Fed's books. They're not on the bullion bank's books. And while COMEX would go bid only and serve to bankrupt all the momentums duped into controlling 75% of historically capped synthetic ranges, they know their ranges For years they've been in place. They know exactly when to go short and literally cap the price and bet against it in the options market, etc., etc. So they're continuing to play this game because they're blinkered to the game. The game has changed. So other than what they can cover into these momentum traders, it'll be the Fed that stumps up the difference. In other words, the COMEX would have to become a Basel III compliant, physically deliverable exchange, or it's going to have to fold. Now, crashing trust in the COMEX open interest is not an option for the CME. However, to comply, they actually may raise margin levels to as high as 100%. That would be compliant. And given the Fed is on the hook for billions of dollars of unbacked legacy OCC FX bets that we just talked about, because they're FX bets, they're not sitting on the COMEX, these are foreign exchange bets, which in gold would then become, because in gold they would have to become NSFR compliant because they are FX bets. The only plausible way out for the Fed would to at least partly revalue gold. However, we're only just at the beginning of uncovering the tail risks. So we should expect volatility, which is why kind of issuing a warning, it's so important to issue a warning here to margined traders. It's important to ensure your futures market brokerage funds are fully segregated. Now, if it's segregated, when a legitimate one-to-one hedge position, maybe you're hedging a physical and you're on the short side to hedge a position, or indeed long positions for that matter, they'll likely be safe. But please move to get this assurance in writing from your broker alongside any shares that you own, demanding immediate physical delivery of these certificates. Now, given the enormous 96% leverage employed, a sudden unwind of the spread between futures and spot will be so fast, and as proven when GATA uncovered that back in 2000 at the Browns bottom, they uncovered that UBS had advance notice ahead of the Bank of England selling its 400 tons of its gold in the year 2000. So we had evidence that these things happen, and they happened in a structured way. Such timing would undoubtedly be known by the agent bank insiders and be announced over a weekend. And really, the brokers who offer short bets on margin could be broken. It is highly likely there will be some broker bankruptcies in a situation like that. So just please, it's a phone call. Just make sure that your positions are segregated at your broker. Now, while momentums continue to coattail the Fed's obvious capping efforts in safe haven gold and silver, higher interest rates will likely lead to a bear market in equities, ultimately increasing bankruptcies in over-indebted businesses. In turn, that's going to result in rising unemployment. And as happens in every single recession, which I'm pretty sure has to occur, even with Trump's new drive, the legacy is toppling at this point. And with such high levels of debt, just saw Yellen stick Trump with a massive problem. We've also got ballooning personal and business mortgages rates, risking a daisy chain, Lehman-like too big to fail global bank default. So there's a lot of risks out there, and you need to just be sure that you are covered.
Hey, Andy, in your most recent episode, you offered a great explainer on how the cartel is using that position concentration to exploit the spread between the spot price and the current front month on COMEX. It's been over $40 in gold and over $1 in silver. And now there's these tariff threats that are threatening a kind of a COVID-like blowback. Can you tell us what you're hearing on the ground?
Yeah, while gold and silver should be exempt from tariffs due to their status as monetary metals, because they trade as a foreign exchange cross against the dollar, so it's cash, it's money. It's actually, obviously it's an FX cross. Now, so it should be exempt. Now, the current widening EFP spreads, though, have drawn unwanted attention to the very tight physical supplies of gold and silver at current synthetically diluted prices. Now, nevertheless, tariff-related disruptions are expediting a supply squeeze in the silver and gold markets, leading to a spike in prices. Now, the largest above-ground holdings of gold and silver reside in the COMEX-related ETFs, gold and silver ETFs. However, on and off ramps occur in the risky, unallocated form. So none of these flows are, as they flow in and out, are NSFR compliant. And alongside the ability to short sell these ETF holdings, they are definitely not one-to-one physical equivalents, raising unknown counterparty risk double ownership concerns. And this means that at any point, real accessible physical free float is far less than is published. Now, fear of Trump tariff threats have been responsible for around 23 million ounces of EFP'd physical silver to flow into COMEX vaults over the last 30 days alone. That means buying spot silver to sell into a plus $1 per ounce higher COMEX price in many cases, alongside short-term annualized lease rates to loan out gold driven to around 3.5%, but as high as 3.9% intraday on Friday.
And that's a lot about gold, but how do you see this impacting the silver price?
Yeah, silver is a monetary metal trading as an FX cross against the dollar. So the risk of a US regional silver prices trading at a premium to spot will impact the global FX crosses, and it's going to continue to attract critically tight, cheaper local London benchmark global supply. It's more draining out. So the risks of short selling futures to buy spot, you've got a higher futures price, so you traditionally sell that and buy spot, and you'd be hedged. But there's a massive risk to that, because the risks of short selling futures at all to buy spot is far too dangerous when silver free float is at risk of dipping below its critical threshold, as this would further expand the spread. And as providers of the bulk of the US silver supply, the proposed very large 25% duties on Mexico and Canada are particularly in focus, as this threat has largely been responsible for driving this large up to $1.30 spread between spot silver and March futures. Now, currently today, it's Wednesday, and we're looking at a 70-cent. It's still, the contango spread is still enduring at around 70 cents. Now, while there's an element of naked long speculators chasing silver higher, you have to remember that traditionally the cartel or the market makers they realize it's naked short, naked long, so they'll take the short side of that. But there is an element of that. 75% of all COMEX open interest, though, is in the hands of the momentums. And it is these heavily leveraged COMEX-centric actors that have been reported to be short-selling March futures at these over $1 premiums in anticipation of this spread normalizing. However, And if you remember, in the oil trade, they tried it one day and it went below zero. If you remember that, unless you had a swimming pool where you could tip the oil into, you could not take delivery. So we've had some other institutionals coming out. We've got former JP Morgan managing director Robert Gottlieb. He assesses, and we just read his Bloomberg piece. He says, if the spreads keep rising, these traders risk, of course, incurring these heavy losses as they seek to unwind their positions. And their efforts to buy their New York futures contracts back from having short sold it to make the market risks sending prices spiraling even higher if they can't do it in an orderly fashion. Now, the likely best case for unhedged US-centric shorts, that includes the Fed-held OCC derivative bets, is that the net effect would balance out at around perhaps 10%, because there's going to be a net effect, which LBMA and Bank of America liquidity providers estimate would be very similar to the effect tariffs had netted out on
All right, Mark gets a little bit wordy there, but the point is that all these derivatives are going to get fucked. That's why they're holding the price down to get out of the ones they've shorted. But that's the difference between a free market and the COMEX bullshit we have now, is all these derivatives and paper by the bullion banks trying to manipulate the price. It's not a free price. All right, I got one last thing on Bitcoin. That Peter Grandage, I've never heard of before.
In every crazed period in history, there was a product or products or a belief of people that went beyond anything realistic. And that's what cryptocurrencies become. First of all, let's talk about a couple of facts that we know. A lot of money's been lost to cryptocurrencies. You may still be hearing, because of I think the greatest Ponzi scheme marketer that ever walked on the earth, who was the biggest believer and the person that they quote the most about it. But there's been a wholesale amount of dollars lost, an unbelievable amount. Let's not forget, it was just a couple of years ago, people were buying real estate on computers. You know, how much was lost in that, and now meme coins. And I think historians are also going to look back and say, listen, we should have known something was wrong when they were naming coins bots. I mean, seriously, I don't mean that to be nasty or anything, but that's the extent of what it's come to. I'm certain at the peak of the tulip mania, there were people being viewed as Mr. Tulip or Mrs. Tulip themselves. But the bottom line is, the first thing that made me turn against it is the manner in which the key spokesperson went about themselves. Here was a person just a couple of years ago telling everybody, sell your stocks, your bonds, your real estate, borrow against your house, and if you're going to buy cryptocurrencies, buy only one, buy Bitcoin.
Take all your money, buy Bitcoin. Then take all your time, figure out how to borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin. Then take all your time and figure out what you can sell to buy Bitcoin. And if you absolutely love the thing that you don't want to sell it, go mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin with it. And if you've got a business that you love because your family works for the business that's in your family for 37 years and you can't bear to sell it, mortgage it, finance it, and convert the proceeds into the hardest money on earth, which is Bitcoin.
Economic investing rule 101. You never put everything in anything. You don't put everything into dry food, ammo, none of that. You have, that's the first thing. Okay. The second, it's been an investment product that has continuously searched for a viable reason to support why it's going to be. Remember, it was at first going to be something that was just going to be used in view of money. Everywhere you're going to go, you're going to be able to use Bitcoin. It's not going to be, because the technology has never gotten to the point where it allows that. Some of the newer things may get to that point, but it won't be Bitcoin. The second thing is, some of the people who were once adamant against it suddenly said it was better than sliced bread. Now, what happens at the last name of Fink? Now, when I was a kid, they told us never trust a Fink. And in this case, I think they were right. Because not only did this person a few years ago basically call it criminal, nothing changed in it.
None of the technology or anything. What changed is the company that he runs realized they could make hundreds of millions of dollars by trading it. And I tell everybody is if he's so convinced that that is the new answer, take all his compensation, including the compensation that the exchange trade funds make, take it in Bitcoin. Don't take it in money, which they still do. They take it in money. But more important than that, it's really nothing more, in my view, of multi-level marketing tied to a Ponzi scheme. And how brilliant this guy is, Saylor. Don't get me wrong. I think Bernie Madoff sits in hell totally envious and jealous what Saylor's done compared to what he was able to do. He found a way to self-propel his Ponzi scheme by getting a company that people invested in, took that, buys Bitcoin, that causes the value of that stock to go up to allow him to get more money to borrow against to buy it, and in a sense becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The issue will come down to this, and this will decide whether or not Peter Granish was right or wrong over the next couple of years, whatever it's going to take to run this course of this thing. The people that still have money and the people that are moving money around the world are central banks. That has not changed yet. I can't say it won't, but they are not only not buying Bitcoin, but they're buying gold like it's going out of style.
Right.
That's the main reason gold has done as bullish. Remember now what I've done back at the end of 2021. I decided to sell all my general equities, but one, on the belief gold was going to go up in price better than stocks and bonds. And guess what? It has. Mm-hmm. It's had a gain that even I didn't expect in terms of percentage-wise. Why? Because central banks recognize two things. And this I'll stand till I'm blue in the face or I'm overrun by crypto nuts. The bottom line is they recognize that paper assets in general are in trouble, particularly certain countries, including our own. That's why they've been liquidating treasury bonds and things of that nature. And second of all, eventually, this whole world debt problem, which we didn't talk about, is not just the United States that's heavily indebted. The whole world is going to have to be solved with a new type of system and a change. And whatever that change is going to be, whoever's going to participate in it is going to want something more than paper.
Right.
Gold worked for a couple thousand years. They looked around and said, you know what? It's still the best thing around. And so that's why the talk of the Bitcoin becoming a reserve currency is just promotional marketing stuff and kind of stuff. Because how could you make something that's so volatile and so swung and deep before without any substantial track record? You know, people talk about, oh, look how much it's up percentage-wise. But people don't know this. And you're too young enough maybe to remember this either. But the penny stock movement in the 80s was built around the same concept. A few people got involved with a penny thing. They traded it. They got it up to $2, $3, $4. Then they came out with the story about why this thing is going to the moon, and that brought in the public. That's the same thing what happened with Bitcoin. When they tell you, oh, it's up 3,000% or whatever the number is, do you know how many people participated in that? Not that many. The person who's bought Bitcoins to cost is much higher than $1, or when they say it was a few hundred or a few $1,000s and all. And in just a couple years, it's gone from 60 to 70,000 to a high to a little over 100. That's great. But you know what? There are stocks that done even better than that, with a whole bunch of people participating. So I just know you bet against it. I'll give you the last example. And it was a shame that this person, who I have great personal liking for, and I'm not going to name them, but was a big diehard on silver, ran a very everyday YouTube channel followed by tens of thousands of people every day. Silver. Silver again, disappointed some again, and we can talk about that. Mm-hmm. A couple of weeks ago, has now turned everything into backing one of these so-called FOD coins. And those are the type of things that happen at the top of movements, not in the early stages of the movements. Not to say that it can't last for a few more days or weeks or even months, but that is not the point in time. And that's why I think, and my whole attitude for our financial planning group is, What's changed most dramatically? People have asked me, I got asked this the other day, what's changed most for you as a planning person over the, say, the last 20 or 30 years? Up until about 2-3 years ago, the primary purpose should have been trying to make capital appreciation. Now you need to focus on capital preservation. It's not how much one's going to make. It's how much someone doesn't lose.
Yeah.
That will be the difference on whether they win or lose. So I went a long way. I've not taken the time to explain my Bitcoin, but for you,
So that's what we keep talking about. The dollar, when people ask me, gold isn't going up, silver's not going up. The point is to get out of the dollar because it's going down. That's phase one. Then it's what do I take that money and buy? And that's why I say you buy gold and silver, because you can't lose. It can't go down because it can't be printed and it can't be inflated. Well, the price isn't going up. That's because of JP Morgan and the bullion banks doing derivatives to keep the price down artificially, not free market. So therefore, all the banks are getting out of dollars and buying gold and silver without, they're just going to COMEX and taking it, or they're going to the mines and taking it. And so now I play the Bitcoin guy because you guys give me a problem. I don't know anything about it. Well, there you go. I guess he knows more than I do. I doubt it, but let's hear another opinion. And yes, he showed Michael Saylor on it. Sell your house for Bitcoin. Yeah, there's probably some problem with this guy. But he doesn't understand Bitcoin. It's not limited. It's not even real. And that's the point of it. Now, the dollar we know is collapsing because they're printing too much. So really the whole point here is to get you out of the dollar and into gold and silver, and then you're protected. And then it will go up, and we're just waiting for that. But because the derivatives keep pushing the price down, that's why it hasn't moved yet. And that's really the bottom line. So keep that in mind. All right. So I am going to swim and get some Chinese for dinner, and we got football tomorrow. So again, football, we got Washington 34-30, KC 27-24, 30-27. Somewhere in that range, KC will win and Washington will win. And that's the bottom line. So Mark Mcgwire gets a little bit wordy and a little bit tough to watch. I mean, because he doesn't talk at the right level, and half the stuff you don't know what he's saying. But he does say that the cartels are in trouble, that all the banks are going long, which means they're all buying gold because they think the price will go up. And basically that's what's happening. So Egon, price is going up. He said that. We keep hearing that. Mark Mcgwire, the end of COMEX. Okay, that will make the price go up. So that's happening soon. I think it's based on the physical. And once all the physical is gone, COMEX is gone. And all these other countries having the prices go up will make COMEX have to, can't stay at 20 when everything's at 40. You got to be in the market. So we will see all that. When's it coming? We don't know. Hopefully sooner, hopefully than later. And we will see. Anyway, so Putin and Trump is supposedly going to Moscow to get peace with Russia and Ukraine. And Zelensky, he's not going to give him any more money. So Zelensky's going to run to Cyprus and go to his house in Florida or whatever he's got. So look for this to end, because Zelensky's not going to get any more money from Trump. And Trump wants peace because he wants to do business. He doesn't want to keep killing people. And, he said this several times. He doesn't want war. Putin doesn't really want war. So hopefully then I can go to Daria in March or April. We'll see exactly when it ends and when I can use my money in Russia. Because right now, if I went, I couldn't survive because my dollars wouldn't be used, and my credit cards wouldn't be used, and my gold, I'm not even sure. Maybe I could use my gold. I'm not sure about how they're feeling with American. Well, that's why I get Maple Leafs and Cougarans, because maybe they take the Cougarans there, or the Philharmonics. Anyway, that's what's going on. So have a wonderful day. Tomorrow, the football. Today, go on YouTube and watch some old football games. That's about it. Otherwise, be well. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. We'll just talk football, and that's it. So www.teaserking.com. You've got my scores. Once again, Washington 34-30, Kansas City 27-24, 30-27, somewhere in that neighborhood. All right, everybody. Have a good day. Take care.